Did you want to go line by line? How would you like to proceed with this, or if there are any significant questions that are jumping out?
Fred, do you have any? No. Okay. We will bring it to the board and see if there's any questions.
Well, just if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman, just for the public in here.
Yep.
What we're requesting is a sum of $4,108,300, which goes to a 3.21% increase, I believe, over last year.
Okay. You want to start, Regina?
Yeah, I mean, I did have a question. Just 1 second. Is this a new line under support services, outside agencies?
Yes. That line, again, we initiated that program this year where we started paying officers to come in and work with us. And we had been using that initial out of what's called Fund 26, the overage in the detail account.
Okay.
But that is not a practice I want to engage in for a long period of time. It was something we needed to do in the immediate to get through the season with what we were experiencing. So we spent approximately $20,000 for a program that we didn't start until, I want to say, right around the beginning, end of June, beginning of July. So I did ask for an appropriation of $30,000 because my intent is to start that program earlier. Right. As soon as the weather breaks and we start getting the kids coming up out of Merrimack Valley and taking over the beach, I intend on having this program up and running. So that's why I requested a $30,000 appropriation for that line.
Okay. Yeah. No, I would. So pretty much, it's just we didn't have it appropriated properly last year.
We didn't have appropriated because that was not a program when I started last year, it wasn't anything I envisioned happening, but when circumstances got to the point that they did, with the shortages we were experiencing, the state police, if you recall, had a significant budget issue, and they're in the same problem we are, finding qualified people to take the job, that they just couldn't provide the level of service that we've experienced in the past, and no fault of theirs, they're in the same boat we are. They gave us everything they could. It just wasn't enough. So I pushed a lot of people up on the night shifts for us, and I used these folks from out of town primarily on day shifts on the weekends when we were getting the huge crowds.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't have anything else.
I noticed on that, in that same vein, you also have a reduction in your part-time special officers' wages. So that kind of offsets that a little. Well,
actually, no. Actually, what happened is over the years we've looked, and one of the things I noticed was we would always be underspent in the part-time officer wages, but we would be overspent in the full-time officers covering the part-time officers. So I shifted some of the numbers to reflect historically what I'm seeing. I know some people look at, me, I kind of look at the bottom line. Am I exceeding my bottom line? And I don't think we ever have.
Right.
But I know for transparency reasons, people want to know, why are we overspending here and not here? So where I can, I'm trying to move money around to properly reflect where the money's being spent. So with that underspending in that account as opposed to overspending in that, I just shifted some of that money. That's really more than what that is.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I mean, you gave the bottom line figure, $4,108,300, which seems like a large number, but when you think about it, and you think about the number of people that you're servicing and the number of people that we have in town in the summer, you really can't compare Hampton to any other town. So you look at a lot of other towns with our year-round population, and they're not far below us on their bottom line either. They're very close on the bottom line. So with what you're asking for, and I think it's important for people, for the public, when they look at the bottom line, to also, when the budget goes online, to look at it line by line so they can see where it's being spent, and that it's being spent in appropriate areas.
Well, the other item I'd highlight, with a 3.21 increase, we've also experienced, as you recall, the voters passed warrant article last year to give the members of the Hampton Police Association, which covers all the sergeants, full-time patrolmen, detectives, and part-time officers, with contractual raises that took effect April 1st. and there'll be another contractual raise due this April 1st. So you have as much as a 6% increase potentially in the 17 budget reflected, because obviously the first year of a contract, it doesn't reflect in the budget, it's outside of the budget. Now it's in the budget, plus the 3% that's coming in April. So coming in at 3.21, even with those raises, I think we did a good job really looking at the budget and moving the numbers and making them really reflect what we're doing.
You did. A couple of things. That uniform pay went up 33%.
Which line, Joe?
For 23. 023, 1900.
For the administration, crime control.
Crime control.
Yeah. That was one thing. We didn't score that right. Well, it's contractual, because crime control is the detectives. As part of the collective bargaining agreement that was signed or approved last year, there was an increase in the detectives' uniform pay because of the fact that they have to wear civilian attire, suit and tie, to help them in that area, because they have to spend more. They have to maintain a uniform set, but they also have to maintain appropriate civilian attire required by policy. So that's why that increased to that degree.
All right. And another question on under traffic control and patrol. Traffic control and patrol.
Yeah.
Vehicle replacement. You had 82,000 in this year's budget, and you spent 0 so far, and you have 82 next year.
If you saw the updated monthlies, the cars literally arrived today.
Okay.
They drove in today. I was downstairs in dispatch when the folks from Irwin Ford showed up with the 3 brand new cars. So we, at the suggestion of, I want to give credit where credit is due, Lieutenant Gidley, who maintains the fleet, asked if I would have a problem if we ordered the cars later in the year. And I says, well, what's the logic behind it? He says, well, it's 2 issues. One, we beat up cars during the summer because there's so many different drivers. And if you talk to anybody that's a fleet manager, the more people that drive a car, you have a car with 100,000 miles. If you drive it, it's going to look a lot better than if 10 people drive a cruiser, just because of the different driving habits. So it saved the wear and tear on the car a little bit. But the other problem we had is when we traditionally get the cars, we would be changing out 3 cars, because when they come in, we have to change the gear out of the existing car, which is a cumbersome job. It takes about 2 days to transfer all the gear out of one car into the new car. So we would be doing that in the middle of the summer. So we'd be down 2 or 3 cars, which in the summertime is just really hinders the operation. So, I said, that's a good idea. When would we order them? He goes, we'll make the order right after Seafood Fest. We'll make the order so we get them after Seafood Fest. And again, they literally rolled in today. So that was the logic behind that. So that's expended.
Super.
Almost all expended.
And support services, court wages going down 40%.
Yeah, I took a look. It's just one of those things with the court system being backed up that we're trying to work more cases out as negotiations as opposed to going to trial. And really trying, they actually have a system now where somebody shows up to court before their trial to try to work out a negotiation with my prosecutor. We're trying to minimize the time an officer is spending in court, because it's time they're not on the street, or it's overtime the town is paying for a lot of them very minor offenses. So if we can come to a negotiated plea on an open container of beer, a speeding ticket, a stop sign, so it's reflecting that we're spending less in that area. We're really trying to spend less in that area.
And vacation wages under support services went up 33%.
Yeah, that was just a move, because in 15 you saw the actual was 17,517. And so I just tried to get a little bit closer to what the actual use was. When you look at sick time and vacation time, it's very hard to judge those, and it's getting harder simply because we're getting a lot more new faces into the workforce, and they have a different mindset as to how they use their time. They look at it differently than we do, and so I suspect those areas are probably going to increase progressively over the years as more of the older guys retire, who save their time. The people that come in the workforce use their time. Okay, that's just the nature of the workforce. That I think those numbers are going to slowly creep up. So I'm just trying to creep it up a little bit and keep up with it.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. Reviewed your budget. I'll go over a couple of salients. I like your budget. I think it appropriates taxpayer dollars to the exigencies and the primary thrust of your operations, and you're keeping lean those areas that you should keep lean. I just reviewed very quickly the budget, and Mr. Welch, great work working with your department heads in this budget process, and Mr. Bridle. Again, on your busy summer, your operational intensity, calls for service are up 21%, 8,600 and change. That's 4 per hour. That dwarfs most law enforcement agencies anywhere in the state by leaps and bounds. And again, that's up from 7,143 the year before. So you're averaging another call for service per hour. Motor vehicle stops are up 48%. Arrests are up 32%. DWIs 28%. You know the drug issues that you folks deal with. Offenses up 34%. Felonies 46%. And of course, there's your community involvement, your community outreach, and then there's that parking issue. And again, 21% of this effort is unreimbursed on state property. Having said that, you highlighted pay and your administration against those stark increases in that huge quantum productivity leap that your department has executed, and I commend you for that productivity surge. Your administration, you touched on some well-deserved contractual pay increases and leadership increases. That it would essentially be flat. It's at 4.27, but with inflation and your contractual obligations, that's essentially flat. Crime control and investigations against that substantial quantum leap in performance is up just 12%. So your response in the field is up some places near 50%, 21%, 84%, 46%. The meat of your budget and what you do and what we see is up just a quarter of that surge. So for those that are actually looking at numbers, for those that actually have a business mind, for those that have some operational talent, that's a huge, huge taxpayer leverage, and we really appreciate it. Traffic and control, again, leveraging the taxpayer dollar is essentially flat. Your training, 1.27, again, a harsh environment for recruiting people, a lot of turnover, the millennial phenomena, and you keep that flat. You don't come in here and burden us with excuses. You get the job done. Again, I really like this budget. Police station and building, a lot gets done there. That's down 4%. Really like the budget. Really like what you guys do. Thank you for the hard work. I know as you rise in the ranks, this is what you always aspire to do. You have a saying for it. You've told me about it, but pushing the paper, you've done a good job. Thanks for the budget. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Rick?
Yeah, I took a look at the budget also at 3.21%. It seems reasonable to me, and I think everyone here made some good points. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Now, how are we with gasoline? Are we going to talk
Gasoline, we saved significant amounts by getting to, as you recall, we went to that
WIC.
the WEX card,
Yeah.
which everybody falls suit after we did it. It's kind of funny talking to people on the gas prices and how to adjust that, because you're kind of locked in when you deal with the state of New Hampshire to a 3-year pricing, which was above and beyond what, absent the taxes, if we were going to the pump right uptown, we could save big money. So we wound up doing that, and that's where a lot of the savings you're seeing in budgets that we just really cut because of the price. And then I went and looked at the actuals, what we were using in each of the lines we have for fuel, and really tried to cut it down to what we've been using, and just trying to watch the fuel, because the cars we're getting, keep in mind in patrol, the SUVs are more fuel efficient than the old Crown Vics. So we'll see a little bit of a savings there. I think our last Crown Victorias are going out the door this year. There's only 2 of them left, and they're admin cars anyhow. So everything is kind of in a better place as far as fuel efficiency, cost. So I think that's where we saved a significant amount of money.
I know it was a big point last year, and I going to the WEX card, I think, has definitely helped us out across the board. So other than that, your budget looks pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Could I just say one more thing? Yeah, I think it is, not a large increase, but there has certainly been a large increase of people asking for help from the police department from many different, almost every which way there is.
I got to be honest, I try to look beyond the borders of Hampton PD. I try to teach, particularly the supervisory staff, to take a look beyond what it is to us. How do we fit in to the budget of the town? What's our piece of the pie? And how, because we have a responsibility, I think, to the taxpayers, but, to the other entities in town to work well with them because, the school, we have a big project going at the school, and do we need it? Yeah, I think we do. Eventually, we need to improve our schools. So I try not to come at the taxpayers with a lot of wants. I try to really limit it to needs. So one of the issues we did last year is we had the monitor truck up on a warrant article, $40,000. I was going to move forward with that again this year. The problem I was afraid of is if that warrant article were to go down, that means we can't replace the truck if it goes down. And we almost lost it last year. The fuel tank started rusting. Remember, I came in with some pictures of the frame and all that. There's no way, in my opinion, that truck would survive another season. So what do? Come back at the taxpayer for $40,000 on a warrant article? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to limit my warrant articles. I know that's another bone of contention with the voters. That it's just the ballot's too long. So I'm trying to do my part to limit it. So talking around with the mounted guys, they came up with an idea. The vehicle I drive is a Tahoe, which is large enough to pull our trailer. I'm going to take that and put that into service with the mounted patrol, and I'm going to get a smaller vehicle because I don't need that large of a vehicle. I just don't. With the things I'm doing, a smaller vehicle the size of the deputies, the Ford, is what I'm going to go with, which is substantially less costly to the taxpayer, and I'm going to try to do that within the surplus of this year's budget, as opposed to adding a $40,000 item to next year's budget or into the warrant article. So we're trying to look at those ways to try to come at the budget. Where could we save? What are we not seeing? One of the things I did consider, and I didn't do it, was I think our activity rates warrant more personnel. The problem we have is, traditionally, the way in Hampton we've done it, we utilize part-time personnel more than any other department in the state of New Hampshire. But again, the recruiting issues we're experiencing are just significant. It's hard to get ahead. We're not getting ahead. We keep falling behind every year because 9 come in and 12 leave. So we're playing that battle all the time. I think we're at that time where we're going to have to consider adding full-time personnel. I didn't add it into the budget, but talking to the manager, I'm considering putting together a warrant article for 2 full-time positions and let the taxpayers take a whack at it. I don't normally like that, but I think we're in a time and an era where I think everybody can see that we're pretty stretched thin, and our ability to address every issue in town. And I hate having to look at taxpayers and say, I appreciate your issue, but it's not as important as this issue. I don't like being put in that position, but I might find myself at these meetings having to tell people that. I appreciate speeding cars down your road with little kids is a problem for you, but I'm at what I'm at. Should I pull one of the SROs out of the school? Should I pull my detective off the task force that's working on the opioids? I'm kind of at saturation right now, and the only solution I see, other than those short-term fixes that we've initiated with the outside agencies coming in the summer operation, but my October has been worse than my August with everything we've been dealing with. I need some full-time personnel, so I was considering drafting a warrant article requesting funding for 2 positions. But I wanted to have that discussion with the members of the board because I'm not going to waste my time doing that if I don't feel the board would support it.
Well, I think you've got some good ideas there. I think driving around in a smaller car is a good sacrifice. I'm sure you would look good in a nice black Escalade, but so I think people will notice.
No, I appreciate it. When I started the process, I made my mind up that I was going to go really line by line and cut everything I could out because I knew I was going to have to add things like the $30,000 to try to bring in the outside. The other attempt we're making to do is there are certain functions within the police department that don't have to be a sworn member of the department. Now, I saw, with interest how the process went last year when the fire department tried to go with a full-time secretary's position, which, I talk to the chief all the time. I think he could have used the help. But the voters spoke, and we have to respect that. So I tried to come at that part of it with a different perspective of maybe I can add a part-time position that would alleviate somebody that's doing a task that doesn't need to be a full-time officer. So I'm looking at a part-time position as an evidence tech. The city of Portsmouth does it, number of agencies where this is a person that, you come in on a Monday, all the evidence from the weekend's activities are in the lockers, you catalog them, we have to, keep a very tight chronology of where that evidence has been, where it's going, driving up to the lab, if we have drugs that have to be analyzed. That doesn't have to be a sworn member of the police, it doesn't have to be a police officer, that can be a civilian. So within the budget, we added some money, so for the potential, if the budget passes, that I could add a part-time civilian position to help in the evidence room, releasing a detective who does that work to go out and do investigations on opioids and other issues that are occurring in town that we desperately need. So I'm trying to do it other ways that I can, but I think we're at that point we have to consider adding full-time personnel.
Thank you.
If not this year, maybe next.
Thank you very much.
Tim?
Just make a quick statement on savings on the gas and stuff. I think we have a member of the budget committee in the audience, and I think it was the budget committee that really pushed that a couple of years ago. So I think kudos to the budget committee for bringing that up and pushing that issue.
Well, you obviously have had a very stressful October with everything that's gone on, and I'll commend your department and the men in your department and the women for a tough month. Hopefully November's a little bit better.
Well, if I could share with the board, obviously we know we had a significant incident occur down at the beach Thursday evening. I got the call from the deputy letting me know that we had a call for service that involved shots fired, that somebody had shot at one of our police officers. When I found the details of what occurred and how they responded and how they reacted, sometimes I think people worry about how much money we spend in the name of training. Well, I will tell you the reason that we didn't lose a police officer that night was training. They did what they were supposed to do. A round went right by one of the officers' heads. The intent was to kill him. He had enough wherewithal to get out of the area. They would have been fully justified in returning fire in the circumstances that occurred. But had they returned fire, they would have placed the public at risk because of the location they were in, very confined area with adjacent rooms with people in it, and buildings that we could have caused more damage and taken an innocent life. And the restraint that was exhibited by those officers was exemplary. And the courage they used to contain that scene and maintain it until the tactical team arrived. And then just the integration between moving people from where they needed to be and just shutting down the area so nobody else was put at jeopardy was really something to watch. And more to the fact that I started barking commands at the deputy what I wanted done as he called me. I went in to get changed, and as I turned on the radio, without him having told these people, they were already doing it. They already knew what to do. They didn't need us to be barking at them to do it. They knew what to do. And that all goes to the level of training and the seriousness with which these police officers take their job in this community. And then just the support, again, that we receive from the Seacoast Emergency Response Team. This is the second time they've been in this community this year for a similar type of incident. That just the cooperation we get from these other communities is essential to the safety of this town and the other towns in the area. So, again, it's just one of those things. Looking forward, I'd love to tell you that this mayhem we're experiencing is going to stop. I hope it will at some point, but I think we're in for a rough ride with some of the issues that are occurring because they're not Hampton issues. They're not New Hampshire issues. They're national issues. Again, I was out at the IACP, and one of my academy classmates is the chief in Sacramento, California. Okay, about as far as we can get from here, and same problems. Big city, same problems he's dealing with. It's just a menace. So it's one of those things you just have to find people that are willing to stay the fight. So far we've been doing good, but a little more help might be needed. So
very good.